My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. An old wives' tale said that if you do not hold your baby and stroke the spine, it will shrivel up and the baby may even pass away. Numerous scientific studies have shown that contact between mother and child actually reduces levels of the stress hormone cortisol, promotes relaxation, and creates a sense of security for both baby and mother that results in babies that sleep longer and better. But what about adults? How important is physical affection to our growth and well-being, both physically and emotionally? My guest this evening, Edie Weinstein, says that touch is just as important for us grown-up kids as it is for the little ones, and is active in facilitating touch events. Edie is a colorfully creative journalist, inspiring transformational speaker, licensed social worker, interfaith minister, editor, radio host, bliss coach, event producer, cosmic concierge, the author of the Bliss Mistress Guide to Transforming the Ordinary into the Extraordinary, and co-author of Embraced by the Divine, the Emerging Woman's Gateway to Power, Passion, and Purpose. She's also contributed to several anthologies and personal growth books. Edie has interviewed such notables as Ram Dass, Wayne Dyer, Debbie Ford, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., Marianne Williamson, Grover Washington Jr., Noah Levine, Shirley MacLaine, Dennis Weaver, Ben and Jerry, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. She calls herself an optimistic who sees the world through the eyes of possibility. Edie writes for the Huffington Post, Psych Central, BeliefNet, Elephant Journal, The Good Men Project, Expanded Family, Meaningful Mom, Bucks Happenings, Montco Happening, as well as a growing number of other venues. You can find Edie at www.opti-mystical.com. Welcome, Edie Weinstein. Good evening, Edie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Victor. It's wonderful to see you. I think the last time we saw each other was at Mount Eden Retreat Center.
That's right.
And I think we were both doing Reiki there, so that had to have been a number of years ago.
Absolutely.
I miss your Punam. I get to see it on Facebook.
You know, you and I have known each other for about 19 years. Mm-hmm. So please share with our listeners your journey. We met at the New Seminary of New York. Please share with our listeners your journey and how you came to the field of interfaith ministry.
Absolutely. Well, it started back in 1986 when I met a man who became my husband. His name is Michael Moser, and we published a magazine called Visions, and that's actually where I started doing the interviews that you mentioned. And Michael had decided to become an interfaith minister himself, enrolled in the New Seminary, which is a school based in New York City. Founded by, among other people, Rabbi Joseph Gelberman, who has since passed. How many years ago did the Rebbe die?
It's 5 years ago.
5 years, wow. And Michael had wanted to become an interfaith minister. Now, right before that, he was diagnosed with hepatitis C, which is a pretty nasty disease. And as a result of that, he developed neuropathy in his fingers, so I typed his papers for him. He would fall asleep while he was reading, so I would read to him. I would watch some of the videos, listen to the audio tapes, and I didn't realize why. God had other plans for me. I had no intention of becoming a minister myself. So after he died, Michael was in the ICU in Philadelphia for 5.5 weeks. Literally, when we turned off life support, because he never got the liver transplant that we had anticipated, I heard the voice. Now, those of you who doubt, what that means, question what that means, I've been a psychiatric social worker for a lot of years, and I know the difference between psychotic voices and the voice of God. And the voice said, call the seminary and ask to finish what Michael started. So a few days after his funeral, I called and spoke with Diane Burke, who was dean at the time, and she said, absolutely, we'd love to have you on 2 conditions. One is that you're doing this for yourself too, and not just for Michael. And if you want to graduate with his class, you have to do the first year's and second year's work simultaneously, or just wait till next year. I said, nope, doing it all at once. So I started in January of 1999, and I graduated with the class that June at St. John the Divine. And it's been a hugely, as you know, Victor, it's been a hugely life-changing experience.
Absolutely.
To be an interfaith minister.
Absolutely. It's amazing the way you describe the question of intention. Why do we do what we do? And sometimes we think we're doing it for our reasons, but Spirit always has other plans for us, no matter what we think we're doing it for. Spirit, I remember when I enrolled in the seminary, the whole reason behind it was that in those days I was doing Reiki. And if you wanted to do laying on of hands in hospitals, you had to either be a licensed massage therapist or ordained in a faith where laying on of hands was considered to be a sacrament. And obviously, having a full-time job, there was no way I was going to massage school and becoming a licensed massage therapist. And a few of my friends who were also on the Reiki path were sending out a $25 money order and an essay to a universal church in California, and they'd send you a certificate of ordination. But that was never my way. I never took the easy path. Mm-hmm. And through a number of wonderful synchronicities, as you know, I wound up in the New Seminary of New York. And the intention was get ordained, lay on hands, and absolutely changed my life in so many ways, in so many paths. And met my wife, Lori Sue, through that, and just so many wonderful things happened. So so no matter what we think we intend for ourselves, Spirit has other things back in the mix.
Absolutely.
So how has your experience as an interfaith minister changed your life?
Only in every way imaginable. One of the things that I love about this, about my education there was the motto, always in addition to, never instead of. I was raised Jewish, like a lot of people that went to the seminary and still go,
absolutely,
enrolled there now. And I realized that God, what I say now is that love is my religion and God's too big to put in a box.
Absolutely.
When I decided to enroll, I told my parents, and I was raised going to a conservative, and for those that don't know what that means, it's not politically conservative. It's kind of the middle ground of Judaism. And I went to synagogue, went to Hebrew school till I was 16. I become a bat mitzvah. Still went to, when Michael and I were living in Florida, Rami Shapiro was our rabbi. For those that don't know him, he is an amazing, amazing guy, Rabbi Rami. So I Judaism was still my root, my core. And what going to the seminary enabled me to do was to grieve. I didn't go to any bereavement groups after Michael died, didn't go to bereavement counseling, but doing the work, the spiritual work involved was part of my healing. And that helped. The other way that it's changed my life is that it's enabled me to marry people legally. I've married over 300 couples since then. And lately I've been running into a lot of them. The other very cool thing is my son just got engaged. He's getting married next year. And the jeweler that he got the ring from was a man whose wedding I officiated 15 years ago.
Wonderful.
So, and I ran into his wife recently, in the supermarket with their youngest daughter. And so a lot of the people I've married, are still married, which is great. So I get to be part of somebody's big day. I'm doing a baby blessing on Sunday. I've done amazingly few funerals. I thought I'd be doing a lot more of them. So it feels like it's something that's part of my life, but it's not a separate part of my life. It influences and informs every aspect because I talk to God all the time. Now, sometimes I look at it as a dialogue between me and something outside of me. And there are times when I look at it as a monologue. It's me and me. That's it. God is everything.
Absolutely.
So that's how it's changed my life.
Absolutely. And how have you employed, we both were trained through the seminary in spiritual counseling. You were you're a licensed social worker and a psychiatric worker. How has it changed the way you approach counseling in your profession?
It has changed it dramatically. Now, I've never worked for a religion. Well, and I shouldn't say that. I worked in a nursing home, but that was before I became an interfaith minister. Since then, I've not worked in any facility that's religiously oriented. So I have to be careful. I tell people, I don't tell anybody what to believe spiritually, but if you want to talk to me about God, you're welcome to. And I'm happy to listen and I'm happy to support it because a lot of times in the therapeutic fields that I'm in, people will say, why did God let this happen? Or, my child was killed. how do I reconcile that spiritually? And what I do is I ask a lot of questions. I don't say God does or doesn't do anything. I say, what if God didn't make this happen? What if this is life happening and God in your spiritual faith is what gets you through it? Can we work with that? And that helps. And I work in the recovery field too. So I work with a lot of recovering addicts, and for many of them, 12-step is part of their spiritual practice as well. So I incorporate it that way. And I tell people, I'm an interfaith minister, but I'm not here to preach at you. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. So it does help. I also notice that I've become much more intuitive, that I tap into what I call God. God is all that is. That, that's how I see the divine. So I say, okay, what does this person need to know? And sometimes they'll say, that's ridiculous. You really want me to tell them that? And Spirit says, yup. And they look at me, the client looks at me and say, how did you know that? Absolutely. I don't tell them God whispered in my ear or anything like that, because then they'd say, you should be on the other side of the desk.
Absolutely. And I can share that I believe that we have in common is that as compassionate as we may have thought we were before, that the seminary experience has really opened our hearts fully, and that the act of compassion and being able to really be present and be in a sacred space with someone and allow them to process whatever it is that they have to process at that time. One of the gifts that we received from the New Seminary of New York.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it does. They should get, we should get I don't know what to say, a thumbs up. Or get commission every time we mention the New Seminary of New York. That's true. It was a wonderful experience, and it gave us an opportunity, you and I, to meet. My guest tonight is Edie Weinstein. She's the author of many articles on New Age. She's what was the book you contributed to? I'm sorry, I don't have the Embraced by the Divine, and it was women from all over the world that shared their life-changing experiences.
And we'll be back with Edie Weinstein and more on the touch movement on Destination Unlimited on the OMTimes radio network after these brief messages.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest tonight is Edie Weinstein. What should we call her? Cosmic Concierge, Bliss Mistress. She has so many titles. And we're going to be talking a little bit about touch shortly, but we're talking about our experience in the interfaith movement and some of the things that Edie has done since we both graduated from the New Seminary of New York. So you've had the opportunity to interview so many wonderful people in the human development and consciousness field. Who are your favorites and why?
Well, of course, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I mean, that interview was hugely life-changing. It was what I call my dream into reality interview that only took 20 years to manifest. So lest anybody think, your dreams aren't real and that they can't come true, Trust me, they do. Why he was my favorite, first of all, was because it's what I set my heart to for years, but also because he was so welcoming and so all embracing that I can still remember sitting face to face with him. And the way that it manifested was pretty miraculous too. When Michael and I started Visions, he was on my bucket list. And you read some of the amazing people, the names of some of the amazing people that I've interviewed. And I thought one day I'd like to interview the Dalai Lama. And nobody in my life said, nah, that's not going to happen. I have almost no naysayers. I have a whole bunch of yaysayers in my life. And my parents were among them, and they've both since passed. And, I kept seed planting for it. I created vision boards with this picture on it. And someone said, well, why don't you cut out your own picture and put it next to his? And I did. And then someone said, why don't you write questions as if you're going to be asking him tomorrow? And I did. Then I went to an event at Rutgers Stadium in New Jersey, and Rutgers was my alma mater, where His Holiness was speaking, and I'm thinking it was 2005. And I had been asked to help promote the event. And I said, sure, I'll be glad to. And by the way, is he granting interviews? And they said, no, he's not. And I said, well, okay, I'll do it anyway. So I walked around the stadium with a tape recorder, and I interviewed some of the other people that were there, and said, why are you here? What does this man mean to you? And they told me. The article ran, I don't even remember where. And when I left, they gave me a postcard that they handed out to everybody with a picture of His Holiness on it. So I taped it to my dashboard. So not only was he with me on the vision board, he was with me in my car, and it's still there. The postcard's quite a bit wrinkled by now, but it's there. It's still in my car. And the interview was organized by a friend of mine who's an American Buddhist named Greg Schultz. And I'm forever grateful for him. He became the event producer when His Holiness was in Philadelphia in 2008. And the man was just, I call him a spiritual rock star. He was at Glastonbury last year, I think. So I thought that was pretty cool. And if people want to read the interview, they can go to my website that it's on there. theoptimystical.com. So he was one of my favorites. Ben and Jerry were fun, although they were over the phone, so I had to keep asking them who was speaking, which one of them was speaking. Most of my interviews have been over the phone. And Michael and I were really bummed. They didn't send us ice cream. We thought, well, they send us samples of ice cream or a coupon or something, and they didn't. But they were very sweet. Who else was fun?
How about Shirley MacLaine?
Shirley MacLaine was interesting. She was one of the few that surprised me. I think Out on a Limb had just come out, and she was probably overwhelmed with interviews, because normally my interviews are conversations, back and forth. I had 12 questions, and back then I was a really young journalist, and I asked the question, she'd answer, and there'd be silence. And then I'd ask another question, answer, silence. And I felt really awkward and uncomfortable. I had to see if I still have that issue. Now, the follow-up, and being a New Yorker, you'll appreciate this. The next interview was a dear friend of hers who since passed, Bella Abzug. And for those that are too young to know,
no silence there.
Yeah, no, definitely not. She was a congresswoman, and her signature look were these big hats, like Easter parade kind of hats. So I was on the phone with her, and my first question out of the box, which I thought was brilliant, was, when Bella speaks, people listen. And she said, what the hell kind of question is that? Her New York accent. And I composed myself, and I said, well, you're quite influential, and what you say carries a lot of weight. How come? Oh, and then she rattles on and on and on. We had a blast.
That's funny.
So those are two of my most memorable interviews. And Ram Dass, I had interviewed 3 times. And Ram Dass was actually our Yenta. Michael and I met at a Ram Dass lecture in Philadelphia in 1986. And we met during intermission. A mutual friend introduced us. So I interviewed him once before the stroke and twice since. And I got to hug him too. He came to Philadelphia a number of years ago after the stroke. And this man has more power in one arm, because one side is paralyzed. I don't recall which one, but just a delight. I really loved interviewing him. So he's up there too.
And what about Don Miguel Ruiz and his 4 agreements? Don
Miguel has been pivotal in my life for a lot of reasons. The book, first of all, and I do my best to live by them. Not so easy all the time, but I had the joy of interviewing him both for radio and for articles that I've written. I've interviewed his son, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., been on his show. He was on my radio show. I met them both for the first time last year at the Celebrate Your Life conference in Phoenix. And just delightful men, very grounded, very playful. So they've been, they're very close to my heart. I feel like they're family of choice, that they're a part of my life as well.
And Marianne Williamson.
Marianne was a firebrand. She was a powerhouse. Just so much energy exuding from this woman. I saw her, again, speak in Phoenix last year. Just top notch. Debbie Ford. She's coming up on, is today her birthday? October 1st?
I believe so, yes.
Speaking.
Yeah.
I think, and she's been a pivotal, her shadow work has been so important to me because, as this airy-fairy cosmic foo-foo social worker, I denied that I had a shadow. Like, oh, who, me? Have anger, have jealousy, have insecurity? Nah, not me. But then when I read her work, I thought, wow, this is a woman who embraces her shadow. So she's been pivotal in helping me to embrace mine. And I got to meet her lovely sister Ariel, and Ariel and Brian have become, again, family of choice. I met them in Phoenix as well, and we've been bless Facebook, because we get to know people a little bit that way. So I've gotten to know them through Facebook, but then again we got to meet hug to hug last year.
More and more every day, we're seeing a calling for those who will take up the banner of compassion and spirit and caring and love.
Absolutely. And I think I call them my marching orders. Every day I set an intention before I even get out of bed to have amazing experiences and connect with extraordinary people. And every day I do, whether it's in person or online or on the phone. People, we're magnets. We're I call them, the dart boards that have Velcro on them.
Yes.
And you throw the ball. And I look at that as if I've got a Velcro heart board on my chest, and people just keep throwing love at me, and I keep throwing love. We all walk around with these heart boards, and we just keep throwing love at each other.
That's it. And the other aspect that I see is that, I've talked about this many, many times on my programs, and I'm sure you've shared your experiences, this whole concept of synchronicity. When you set yourself out on a path, and it's a path of spirit and compassion and healing and love, you're put into situations where you come across people and you connect with people and you receive messages. And the growth of all of that is just so exponential once that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Only every day, only all the time. 100% of the time. I'm never disappointed. I hear messages say, okay, call this person. Why do you want me to call it? Just call them. It doesn't matter. Just do it.
Absolutely. It's we could do an entire show just about synchronistic events that have happened in our lives. And I think maybe I'll do a panel show on synchronicity in the not too distant future. And just
I would love it. I'd love to be part of that, because I've had a lot
stories. Of them. I just came back from Tulsa, Oklahoma on a business trip, and something happened out there. So it never ends, no matter where you are.
Yeah. Well, I call them cosmic coincidences.
That's it.
Where we meet who we're supposed to meet when, and for whatever purpose. And here's another thing for your listeners. If you start to feel like life isn't working out the way you want, think back about how far you've come. Like, look at a time period. Think about how many people you've met, how many experiences you've had. What was working behind the scenes? Who or what was pulling the strings so that certain people showed up? Certain timing of events occurred that you have no clue about. And when I start feeling dismayed, like, it's not happening fast enough. Why isn't this working? Why, how come it's not fair? This sucks. I think, wait a minute, you don't know why things are working the way they are. You don't know what else, things are working for us, not against us. They're working in our favor. And yeah, maybe that's a rationalization, but it sure feels a whole lot better than whining and complaining.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the life makeovers when we come back, and we'll also start talking about touch and cuddling and all the events that you're participating in. But speaking of which, my guest is Edie Weinstein. Edie, please tell our listeners about the events that are coming up and all about you and connecting with you.
Okay, well, real quickly, there's an event coming up on October 15th called Hugs Across America, and the website is hugsacrossamerica.info. And do you want me to talk more about specifics after our break?
No, go ahead. Talk about it.
Okay. It was the brain and heart child of two friends, one of whom you know, Kim Skipper Corbin and Tex Allen, who are out in San Francisco. Tex does free hugs, but he does them in a special way. They're trust hugs, where he blindfolds himself and holds his arms out and say, okay, come and get me. And people love on him. They hug him. Well, I saw a video that he and Kim did out in San Francisco. So I contacted her, and she and I have never met personally, but she's a publicist for New World Library, and so she sends me a lot of books for review and people to interview myself. And I said, do you want to do something with this? Because I do something called Hug Mobsters Armed with Love, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And she said, oh yes, let's talk to Tex. So we decided to put on this event because, as you mentioned, we live in a very divided country right now. And when I hug people, I don't know what their political beliefs are. I don't know what their spiritual beliefs or lifestyle is. I just hug them. So we chose this day because it was available. It's a Saturday, and I love it because it's my birthday weekend. My birthday's October 13th. I thought, what better way to celebrate than to do what I love to do, which is to hug people. And remember Hands Across America 30 years ago?
Sure.
Well, this is like that, except it's just hugging. So we're asking people, no matter where they are, to hug somebody, to be involved in an event, or just do it casually. And right now, I'm thinking we've got like 20 different people throughout the country organizing events. And if you go to our website, hugsacrossamerica.info, you'll sign up, and I will send you an email with some ideas.
And tell people where they can find out more about Edie Weinstein.
My website is www.opti-mystical.com. I'm also on Facebook.
Wonderful. And we'll be back with more of Edie Weinstein and the Touch Movement after these messages on the OMTimes Radio Network.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Are you in an interfaith relationship and thinking of getting married? For 18 years, Reverend Lori Sue Brockway has been creating personalized, loving, and romantic ceremonies for couples of all faiths and cultural backgrounds. Reverend Lori Sue's sensitivity to the needs of interfaith couples is reflected in the compassionate and inclusive way she addresses the concerns of parents and families. Reverend Lori Sue is also the author of several best-selling books on interfaith weddings and wedding vows. Selected as one of the top interfaith officiants by New York Magazine, Reverend Lori Sue serves couples in the New York metropolitan area and beyond. Find out more at her website, yourinterfaithwedding.com.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Join me, Maggie Chula, on Mondays at noon Eastern for Mastermind with Maggie. Let's work together in a mastermind. We can resolve life's problems and create goals for the future. Build action steps empowering you to create your life in partnership with your divine source of light, your soul. Manifesting your goals can be simple and easy, so come with your problems and leave with a plan. The Akashic Master Teachers and I are waiting to help you.
Hello, this is Alec Baldwin for Save the Manatee Club. In an animated TV show, I was the voice of a marine biologist dedicated to saving Florida's imperiled manatees. It was a lot of fun, but there's a serious side too. Tragically, many of these gentle marine mammals suffer injuries or die from boat strikes, and their habitat is being lost. Manatees need your help. Please call 1-800-432-JOIN or visit www.savethemanatee.org.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening is Edie Weinstein. She's the cosmic concierge, the bliss mistress, the master of touch, and we'll talk more about the touch movement in the second half of the show. But we were talking about life changes and life makeovers. You're an expert on whole life makeovers following major life changes. Please share about this work.
Absolutely. Like everything else that I do, it comes from direct experience. Roll back the clock to November of 2013, and I developed shingles on the left side of my face. I looked like a Klingon. I had ridges and bumps, and my left eye was swollen shut. And I thought, oh my God, what if I look like this forever? What if the ice pick chisel pain in my head doesn't go away? And I knew where it came from. My mother had died a few years earlier, and my father a few years before that. And like many of us in the healing fields, we repressed our feelings in the service of keeping on, keeping on. I was the social worker that dealt with hospice for them. I was the minister that officiated at their service. I did not want a rabbi that didn't know them officiating. So I did all of that. I became my mother's power of attorney, executor of her will. So the grieving daughter got left behind. So the shingles occurred. They were gone within a few months, and I still have what I call the shingles tingles on my forehead. Every once in a while, a little bit of neurological twitching. Then I thought, okay, my body is telling me I need to slow down. Yeah, I'll slow down, except I didn't. I was working full-time as an addictions counselor, 12-hour days at my job, plus coming home and working and writing and sleeping maybe 5 or 6 hours a night. On June 12th of 2014, I was on my way home from the gym, and I had been going 5 or 6 days a week, probably most days at 8 o'clock at night. Now, this was a Monday, I think it was a Monday morning, and I had what I knew immediately were heart attack symptoms. Crushing, like, jaw pain, where it felt like somebody grabbed my jaw and wouldn't let go. Searing heartburn pain, lightheadedness, dizziness, torrential sweats. And I didn't go directly to the hospital. I drove home, and like a good little codependent workaholic that I was, I called and canceled with a client. Said, I'm not feeling very well. I can't come in today. And then I said, I'm really sweaty. I need to take a shower. What are you doing, woman? Get to the hospital. And I didn't call 911. I drove to the hospital. And don't ever, ever, ever do that. I could have killed somebody. And I stumbled into the ER, and I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. They whisked me up to the cardiac cath lab. And within an hour, I had a stent inserted in a fully occluded artery. And dear friends came to visit me, and she said, the wife of the couple said, I demand to talk to your social worker. They need to know what your lifestyle is like. You cannot go back to work next week. I don't care what your cardiologist says. You need to take 2 weeks off. And when Janet speaks, I listen. Her husband, Phil, from New York, leans over my bed and says, I love you. He says, but if you go back to work next week, I'll come over and break both your legs. And he's my son's unofficial big brother, father, go-to guy, father figure. And I believe them. So I didn't go back to work. My boss says, we're not going to let you in the door for 2 weeks. Stay home. We will take care of your clients. So I was lying on the couch watching the ceiling fan spin. And I was reading a book at the time written by somebody who I had on my radio show. And he was a coach. And he was talking to this guy who was his client, who was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He had a massive heart attack and wanted to go right back to his routine. And the coach said to him, don't let your heart attack go to waste. So that was good advice for me. I was not going to let my heart attack go to waste. And a month later, I had kidney stones. Worse pain than the shingles. So I clearly didn't get the message. My body still wasn't getting, I wasn't getting the message that my body was sending.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. You had kidney stones?
Oh yeah.
God. Oh, horrible. So a dear friend of mine that's known me since I was 14 says, you call yourself a woman of integrity and a woman of your word, but you've been lying to yourself all along. And she's not metaphysical at all. She's very down to earth, grounded kind of person, accountant, my friend Barb. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you've been telling yourself, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take better care of myself. And your body called you out on it, said, we don't believe you. So since then, I did cardiac rehab. I've lost some weight. But the biggest thing that I did was let go of the weight of the world. I was carrying everybody. And I realized that of all the addictions, workaholism is probably the only one that's encouraged. And not only did I work hard, but I literally became a workaholic. It was my identity. Who am I if I'm not needed? Who am I if I'm not on all the time? And I used to say that sleep was highly overrated. I take naps now, and I love it. I traveled more in the last 2 years since the heart attack than I did in the previous 20 years. And I've said I need to hold my own heart sacred the way I hold other people's hearts sacred. So the makeover is not just a physical, deeply emotional. A lot of people that have cardiac conditions, that have had heart attacks, will tell you that the first component of it is physical healing, but the second is emotional and spiritual healing, that we've experienced trauma. And it's about looking at this as any trauma survivor would, that you need to be gentle with yourself. So I'm learning to do that as well. So I teach people how to look at their lives in ways that they might not have before, because we're called on to do makeovers and do-overs all the time. When a relationship ends, when a job ends, when we're in financial crisis, when somebody dies, when there's a hurricane, which we experienced too in 1992 in Homestead, Florida. We lost our home to Hurricane Andrew. We all get to have do-overs and makeovers.
Absolutely.
So I teach people how to do it gracefully.
And here's the synchronicity. I've been through something very similar, of course.
Yeah.
And I had my first stents put in 2005, and had no issues and followed everything and lost a lot of weight and everything. But I was still carrying a lot of burdens. And earlier this year, funny story, my original, and this is for our listeners, just a little edification, my original stents were put in the left anterior descending artery. And I was fine. Now, the rest of my heart was actually perfect at the time. Earlier this year, after a number of circumstances, I started getting a little bit of pain again, and I realized I was having an issue. I never had a full-fledged heart attack, just the warnings, and went right to the cardiologist. And you there?
Yes.
Okay, I thought I almost lost you. Went to the cardiologist. I had a little edit point here. Okay. Went to the cardiologist and went right into the hospital and did the angioplasty. And sure enough, I had to have 2 more stents put in adjacent to the left anterior descending artery. Now, there's an artery there that not everyone has, and I happen to have one. It's called the ramus, R-A-M-U-S, which I had never heard of, and quite frankly, I don't think my regular doctor ever heard of. But some people have it, and so I said to my cardiologist, it was really important that I paid attention this time. He said, absolutely. I said, had I not, I would have been an, ready, grown, ignoramus. So in any event, I know exactly what you're talking about. So let's start talking about touch. This is the fun part of the show. Let's talk about touch.
Oh, goody.
So what exactly is a cuddlist?
Cuddlist. Okay. Well, first of all, there's a website called cuddlist.com, cuddlist.com. So you think about it, it's kind of a double entendre, that it's a list of people that do one-on-one cuddling sessions. And if you're a cuddlist, it's like you're an expert in cuddling. And it was created by 2 people, Adam and Madeline, who were both cuddle party facilitators like me, which I'll explain a little bit about as well. And they created this service where people can hire us to do one-on-one cuddling sessions. Now, it's clothing on, non-sexual, nurturing, by consent, either in an office or home or out calls. And it's for anybody, any gender, any adults. You have to be an adult of any age. And when was the last time, other than a psychotherapist's office, where you had an entire hour devoted just to you and where you were held, rocked, cradled, massaged, have your head stroked, have your head massaged, that's just for you, besides with Lori Sue. But, in life in general, most people don't get that. So what cuddlists do is meet those touch needs that clients have.
Now, how did you get involved in the cuddle party phenomenon?
Cuddle party, okay. Cuddle party, first of all, is, again, non-sexual, nurturing, clothing on, PJs workshop that was created by 2 people that used to live in New York that are now out in California, Reed Mahalko and Marcia Baczynski. I found out about Cuddle Party through a website that was announcing different workshops. Now, I live in the Philadelphia area, and this was in New York City, not considered the bastion of cuddly people, although there are people like you there, and other friends that I have in New York. So I went up to the workshop with a friend, bless her for accompanying me. I probably would have gone by myself. And I came into this 5th floor walk-up brownstone in, I think, the Upper East Side. And there were 18 people there. all different ages, dressed in PJs. And by the end of the workshop, I knew, it was a 3.5-hour workshop, I knew two things. I wanted to bring Reed to Philadelphia to facilitate a cuddle party, which she did that summer. He came in and did 2 of them. And I knew I wanted to be a facilitator. And I was certified, took the training, and was certified in January of 2006. So what Cuddle Party is, how it got started, first of all, just real briefly. Reed is among other things, a massage therapist, and he was also doing the Landmark training at the time. And they have what they call a leadership project, where you have to do something that's of service and that's sustainable, long lasting. And at the same time, he decided to throw a party for his massage therapist friends, because those of us that do healing work often don't get enough nurturing touch ourselves. So he invited a whole bunch of friends, and some of them were not massage therapists. And they said, we don't know what we're doing. We can't massage the professionals. So he says, okay, guys, change of plans. Bring pillows, blankets, teddy bears, come dressed in PJs. We'll have a cuddle party. And if you remember when you were a kid, like puppy pile kind of stuff with siblings and cousins and friends and all that, that's how it started out. And the second workshop, Marcia came to, and by the third workshop, they had media interest. And so they would have the press come out. And it's become a worldwide phenomenon. And it's a 3 to 3.5 hour workshop that focuses on the kind of touch that I was talking about, but also what people's experiences have been like with touch. There are rules, and the first one is, rule number 1 is, this is a non-sexual event. The way it says non-sexual, nobody gets naked here. And if you have to ask before you touch anybody. And the rules of cuddling are on the Cuddle Party website. It's just cuddleparty.com. So that's how I got involved with it. And since then, I've probably facilitated between 250 and 300 of them. And I have several coming up, and you can go to the Cuddle Party website, and that'll tell you where they are all over the world. Right now, I'm thinking there are over 120 certified facilitators. And, we're screened carefully. We have to go through, a process. We have to be certified in CPR and first aid as well. And we have to be approved by the people that are, that are running it. So that's how I got involved with it.
And we'll be back with Edie Weinstein and more on the cuddle party phenomenon, the hugging movement, and the whole thing about touch after these messages on the OMTimes radio network.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
When Dad needed help getting around, I became his driver. Soon enough, it was up to me to be his housekeeper and financial manager, too. When he moved in, I became his cook and even his nurse. But no matter what roles I play, I know I'm still his daughter.
We understand the roles you play. So to help, we created aarp.org/caregiving, where you can connect with experts and other caregivers. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening is Edie Weinstein, who calls herself a a conscious concierge, or I'm sorry, a cosmic concierge, and the bliss mistress. And we're talking about cuddle party and the cuddle party phenomenon. Now, you use the term hug mobsters. Who are the hug mobsters?
Okay. Well, that's me and a bunch of my friends. In February of 2014, Valentine's Day weekend, I went to 30th Street Station, which is a big train station in Philadelphia, with a bunch of friends to do a free hugs flash mob. And there were about a dozen of us at the time. And the idea was that Valentine's Day is every day and that it's not just about romance. Love comes in all forms. So after the event, friends started calling us hug mobsters, flash mob, hug mobster, mobsters. And I thought, mobsters, violence, guns, drugs, I don't think so. But I said, what about hug mobsters armed with love? And that's what we became. So I've done free hug strolls, I call them, through Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is near where I live in Bucks County. But I've also done them in Philadelphia for the Independence Day parade. I was at the DNC at City Hall when the Democratic National Convention was in Philadelphia. And I hugged a guy dressed as Darth Vader. And I said, bad guys really need hugs. He says, yeah, we need them more than anybody.
Absolutely.
So I got to hug him. What else? Just at the We Are Orlando rallies in my area in Doylestown and New Hope, and people really needed hugs for those. So I've done them any and everywhere I can. I keep the free hug signs in my car because you never know. We encourage people to hug wherever and whoever is around.
That's so wonderful. That really is. Now, I know from personal experience that most folks don't know how to properly hug. And I actually had to have someone teach me because the tendency is to hug left to right or right to left. But the real best hug is a heart-to-heart hug, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I've also added, and this would be fun too, called an Om hug, where you hug somebody and you chant Om together. And I found that I can exhale longer if I'm chanting Om with somebody at the same time, and you feel the vibration in each other's chests as you're breathing and you're chanting together. So when you get home, try that with Lori Sue. See how that feels.
That's wonderful.
I encourage people to do that, to hug each other that way. So and a lot of people are very uncomfortable. They'll do the pat 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 on the back hug. And I have a dear friend who's a wonderful hugger. And when he used to do that with me, I said, the next time you do that, I'm going to belch on your shoulder. So he stopped it, and then there's the bro hug. That I'm not quite sure it's okay to hug you, dude, but I'm gonna pretend it's okay. So I encourage people to hug however they're comfortable. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Now, hugging is part of touch. Why is nurturing touch so important?
Well, for a lot of reasons. You mentioned in the beginning of the show that it's important to nurture babies. Babies that are not touched enough, even if they're fed, clothed, their other biological needs are taken care of, they fail to thrive. So that's one reason. It encourages brain development. It's good for pain relief. It creates a bonding between the child and the parent or whoever is cuddling them. There's a sense of trust. It strengthens our immune systems. It lowers our heart rate and blood pressure. When I do the free hugs events, I say hugs for the heart from the heart. And I also say that, more oxytocin is a brain chemical that gets stirred up when you're in love, when you have an orgasm, when mothers nurse their children. So I say more oxytocin means less OxyContin.
Absolutely.
So it is pain relief. What else? Reduces drug and alcohol cravings. And that, touch doesn't have to be hugs. It could be high fives, could be handshakes, anything where there's skin to skin contact, because our skin, think about this, our skin is our single biggest organ and we neglect it.
Absolutely. So, what about those children who are brought up in orphanages? Have there been any studies about what happens to them if they don't have that contact?
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of studies about that, again, they fail to thrive. They have developmental difficulties, a lot of behavioral difficulties, acting out behaviors. Imagine that your body is wired for healthy touch and you don't get it. It's deprivation.
Yeah.
It really, we feel deprived. And I've worked with a lot of adults as a therapist who had not necessarily lived in orphanages, but lived in homes where touch was either violent and abusive, sexual, not by consent, not consistent. I have friends now who didn't grow up in touchy-feely, huggy homes, and they're among the most nurturing, affectionate people I know. So they made a conscious decision that they were going to do it differently in their lives.
In talking about this phenomenon, you've said that skin hunger is as vital as food hunger. Please explain.
Absolutely. As I'd mentioned a moment ago, our skin is our single largest organ, and we need that nurturing touch to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves, let's say, stable, because a lot of people who experience clinical depression are isolated. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who's depressed doesn't get enough touch, but what I've seen is that the people who don't get enough touch are often more depressed. And when people feel lonely and isolated, they fail, as adults, they fail to thrive as well. So think about the things that people do to get touch. And we're, rolling back to the idea that a lot of people go for sexual touch because they think they can't experience it other than in a sexual relationship. So imagine what it would be like. I mean, I don't know how you grew up. I grew up in a very nurturing family where, nobody left the house without a hug and a kiss. And I love you. Back rubs, cuddling. My mother, one of my favorite things is my mother would stroke my hair. And imagine what that feels like to have that need met. So that's what I mean is that you wouldn't a lot of us are starving for healthy touch, the way we would starve if we didn't get enough food.
Can healthy touch turn around both physical and emotional and mental illness?
Oh, I believe it can. I've seen it. When people feel cared about, when people feel like they matter, when people are held, they thrive. I keep getting back to that one word, thriving, because thriving is more than just surviving. And think about if you're having a rough day and you have somebody that can hug you just for a moment. It's like that, whatever it is, doesn't change what happened, but it changes your ability to deal with it. When you feel seen, heard, understood, accepted, embraced. Think about the words that we use to describe, things kinesthetically. That I've seen people. For myself, part of the reason why I do the hug strolls is that it feels good to my heart. I love hugging people, so it's good for me, and I really believe that helped to heal my heart. Is doing these hug events because I started doing them in earnest after the heart attack.
So if it's so important, why do so many people avoid touching?
Partly for the reasons that I mentioned. They didn't grow up with it. It felt uncomfortable. It was intrusive, especially with children. Think about when we grew up, and not so much now, but, go hug Aunt so-and-so, and Aunt so-and-so smells like cigarettes. You don't want to hug that person, but your mother says, oh, don't hurt her feelings, go hug her. We tell children to let people touch them. And I believe that children have the right to their own bodies. And when I do the hug strolls, I'll say to a parent, if it's okay with your child, can I hug him or her? And then if the child says no, it's no. Even if the parent says, oh, go hug this lady, I'll say, no, they need to know that their body is their own. So some of us didn't learn that our bodies are our own. Some people feel like, ooh, icky strangers. I don't want to touch strangers. And what I tell people about Cuddle Party, for example, is if you go to a supermarket and stand in the checkout line, people that you see there are the same kind of people you'd see at a Cuddle Party. People just like you. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you because you hire a cuddlist or because you go to a Cuddle Party. I remember years ago I did a media-friendly Cuddle Party which meant, I forget which local television station came out to cover it, but Stephen Colbert got a hold of the footage, and he gave it a wag of the finger, unfortunately, and he called it something like an orgy for the socially inept. And I was mortified when I saw this. It was hysterical. So I called Reed, crying, and he says in his typical Reed fashion, darling, any publicity is good publicity. And I said, but you don't get it. He was making fun of my cuddlers. So I sent Stephen Colbert an email, which he never responded to, by the way. And I said, as a responsible journalist, you should know what you're talking about. I invite you to bring your PJ-clad butt to one of my cuddle parties. And he never did.
Obviously. So, yeah. That's funny. And for all the reasons you were talking about, obviously consent is so essential to this process.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely is. And even if people know the folks that come to cuddle party with them, we say you still have to ask. If you and Lori Sue came to one, you'd still have to ask permission and get a verbal yes before you touched each other. So there are times when people don't want to be touched, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that they're rejecting you outright. It's just for right now, I just want to be, in my own space. And we thank people when they say no to us. And in a cuddle party, which is not always easy to do. Nobody wants to hear no. I don't want to hear no.
Now, you are co-facilitating a major event on October 15th. Please tell our listeners about it.
Yes. Again, Hugs Across America. And I'm co-organizing it with two amazing people out in San Francisco. Kim Skipper Corbin, who you say you know, and Tex Allen. Tex is a dude that does free hugs blindfolded, trust hugs, he calls them. And so the three of us decided to put this event on the same year, 30 years later, as Hands Across America. And we're encouraging people wherever they are to hug somebody, to get involved with free hugs events. If you go to our website, hugsacrossamerica.info, you can sign up. You can look and see what's going on. If you sign up, I'll send you an email that will give you ideas for how to organize your own event. I'm doing one in Philadelphia at the Love Sculpture near City Hall, 1 o'clock on October 15th. So I'm inviting people in the Philadelphia area to join us there. Kim and Skipper are doing... Kim Skipper Corbin and Tex Allen are doing theirs out in San Francisco. There's somebody in Austin, Texas, Portland, Oregon, New York, D.C. I'm trying to think where else that I know where we've got pockets of people. So you can go to the website. You can also go to our Facebook event page, Hugs Across America, Embracing the World, and that will tell you more about it as well.
I think you're absolutely right. What the world in America needs now is hugs, sweet hugs. There we go. Edie Weinstein, what a delight to have you on Destination Unlimited with us tonight. Tell our listeners one more time how they can find out about you.
About me. My website, OptiMystical, O-P-T-I, mystical.com. Where that name came from, again, God spoke to me and said, you're not just an optimist, you're an optimistic who sees the world through the eyes of possibility.
And I think you have shown us so many wonderful possibilities tonight. My dear friend Edie Weinstein, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Mwah, I love you. Bye.
And listeners, I love you back. And listeners, thank you for joining us tonight on Destination Unlimited. Have a wonderful week.